All right, so here we are with Simon Parkin from a group at UCL, and speaking on excessive user experience of password reset policy in the university. This is one of our referee papers. Simon,
okay, thanks a lot. Okay, so this is work I did with Sammy, who's hiding at the back there, and Kat and Angela, who I believe is giving the keynote tomorrow. So, people have to use passwords in organizations, but there's also these things called help desks. This may be you ring up the help desk, they help you, or you go to this help desk that's hidden away somewhere, some tiny desk, and they help you there. There's a manned help desk. Or the thing that's popular at the minute to try and keep the costs down is to have some website on the intranet or something that you go to, and you do it all yourself. And that's the plan. And so, as has been said, in a few of the other talks, there's these password policies in organizations that you have to abide by. They can be unusable. And with that, they can be insecure. For one, these passwords can be forgotten, but also people may, as has been said earlier, they can develop these strategies for being able to use passwords. They write them down, you might lose the note, that kind of thing. And so what we were interested in is these help desks, so that they know that they're doing a good job, they keep logs. This also lets them know what's happening, so they can record these support requests from people, people turning up, people ringing up, people doing things with the self-service, and the logs track these individual password changes as well. But logs do not capture the impact upon end-user productivity. It's something might look successful, but we don't know what people have gone through to get there. And also, system managers are not incentivized, and what happens is the users are left to just cope with it, as I said, coping strategies and the like. So what we did, exploratory analysis of a university's help desk log data. This spanned 30 months. It's thousands of registered staff and students and 500,000 system events. What we were looking at was monthly tallies over those 30 months. And the analysis informed some follow-on exploratory interviews. That's a small sample of 20 students. And even with this, we're able to begin to uncover issues that are underrepresented in the logs. So the systems that were logged that are under observation, there's this personal password management system. So that's, as I said, this site that you go to, and it's assumed you know your password, and you enter that, and then you enter your new one, and you've changed your password. And the system doesn't leave you alone. It sends you reminder emails over a period of time, and it'll send a few more to you if you ignored the first one. Nobody does that. And then there is this password expiry, but then there's also, in the system we observed, there's this grace period after expiry where you can still reset your password. But then also, there's this extra system. People may forget their password, and so there is this personal password recovery system, perhaps to complicate things further. You then have your own memorable phrases and hints that you record in this university when you join or when you register for the system. So that's a phrase and then some hints for the phrase. So we employed exploratory data analysis to explore what the logs could show of the user experience already. It may be that there's hints in there of the kind of experiences people have, and the unsuccessful or successful reset or recovery of passwords. This EDA informed interview questions, so that's 9 open-ended questions based on what was happening in the logs or what was not seen in the logs, and experiences of using these systems and the attitudes towards the password policy that these students have to use. The idea being that we analyze these interviews with some holistic thinking, relate this user experience to the numbers, and figure out if there's something that can be added to this logging process or to the support process to make it a little bit easier for people. So here's some summaries. So that's months across the bottom, percentage of users going up the side. So the green is everything's great. You've reset your password within your window. The blue at the bottom is changing it the password within that grace period. So it's kind of consistent there. And then there's this, in the amber, is a password change using this recovery system. So that's where you've forgotten your password and you have to then fall back to these memorable answers. And then in the red is going to the help desk. And I guess symbolically that's in the red because organizations, as I said, they try and keep the costs down. And so they kind of encourage you to do it all yourself. What's interesting already is, for instance, if I can find it, there are these kind of peaks in the Septembers of people having to fall back to this recovery system because they've come back after the summer and they've forgotten their passwords. But then that, again, trying to explore what the reflection of what's actually happening, is that people creating passwords as they join and then forgetting them straight away. And on first glance, this doesn't look great, is using the recovery system. In the green is the percentage of people who are successful at doing it, and in the red is the proportion of people who are failing at remembering their memorable answers. And so we weren't best pleased at those numbers, so we went and got more detailed information. And so what this is within a 24-hour period, if people are trying to recall their memorable answer and then try and recall again, and then try and recall again, is it that the sort of the pain of recalling your memorable answers, is that consistent for everybody, or perhaps is there a proportion of people who are failing at that more than everybody else is? But what we see is that a lot of people try once and then they're away. And what we're interested in here is where it drops off after 3 attempts. That's where things get locked out. What's happening to people? Are they going around and looking for this recall aid? Oh, I've got my password written down somewhere, I'll go and find that. I should be doing my work, but I need to go and find it. Or are they going to the help desk? Do they know there's a help desk? We heard anecdotes of students turning up to the help desk in tears. So they might, who knows what kind of journey they've been on, trying to get hold of their password before things have been fixed. But what's interesting is it tails off to something which you may assume is something automated. And one thing is, what is the noise of trying to use the system? If someone's trying and trying and trying, how far do we go along here to where we're identifying people who perhaps don't know that the help desk is there and they think my only chance is to stay up all day trying to remember what my memorable answer is? Because as was said before in I think the questions for the last talk was people may set their memorable answers years ago and then they've got to try and recall them. So that was lots of food for thought for these interviews that followed. There's 20 participants, students at the participating university, 16 women, 4 men, mean age of 25. These were 20-minute individual interviews, which we transcribed and analysed. So there was this difficulty in meeting the criteria for 17 of the 20. It felt like trial and error. They go, oh yeah, I remember it's got this rule and that rule. Okay, I'll try a password. Oh, no, it's telling me that there's this other rule. So it's almost like there's a challenge to remember all the rules, let alone remember your password. And then these difficulties, they're not obvious from the logs. And as I said, if people are trying, then it's distracting them from something else. And for 13 of the participants, the password reset, it felt like it was too frequent. They just said a password, they've just habituated it, they got used to it, and then it feels like they're being asked to do it all again. And interestingly, 7 participants thought there was insufficient feedback during this reset. It felt like a bit of a guessing game. And there was this feeling that there was a lack of clear reasoning of why they're doing all this. So here's P15 saying, I mean, if there are any pertinent security reasons for having to change it so often, I think you better explain it for non-technical users, which is interesting. Feeling angry because I have to change it so often if I haven't understood why, implying that if they understood why, they may not be so angry about it. And what's interesting with, if back on that slide where everyone's resetting in the green and everything looks fine, the 18 participants reset before the deadline, but for 5 of these students, it was because the reminders, they get them and it's like, oh God, like some of it's in uppercase and it's telling me things are going to expire and all this kind of thing. But then there was three students who thought these reminders, oh, that they're really useful. It helps me. I've got my life in order and I get this email and I calmly go and reset my password. So the costs to the individual, they may be different for all of those supposedly successful people, successful users. And interestingly, in contrast to the numbers we saw before, admittedly there's 5 of our participants had used this recovery system, but they thought it was straightforward. And what was odd was 3 had heard of it but not registered, and the rest were just unaware it even existed. So again, it's if they forget their password, is there this kind of panic about what to do? It's not just a strategy of managing your passwords, but knowing what the support channels are as well and feeling that those channels do support you. But when people do go to the help desk, it's clear cut and it's quick. Again, something that isn't shown in the big green successful quotient of users. Of our 20 interviewees, there was this cut down the middle of, I get my email, the email saying, change your password, they do it nearer then, or they'll do it nearer the expiry date. And these conscious strategies, we're not seeing them in the logs. And then harking back to the talk this morning about the coping strategies that experts have, 12 of our participants, they talked about these strategies they have for creating passwords that both met the rules but also were easy to remember. And it may be sequential changes to some kind of phrase, or what we saw was also this kind of list of words in some native language, or even city names, village names in someone's native country, and try and change that into some phrase that's acceptable. And 6 of our participants wrote these passwords down. And what's interesting here for the sysadmins is if people are having to create these essentially offline recall aids that they can't see, then do they then require the commitment of resources to be able to monitor what people are doing and respond to things that people might be doing in order to maintain security? And then I think risk understanding and situational awareness was mentioned earlier today. 7 of these students felt a sense of immunity to security breaches and didn't comprehend the security that was mandated of them. But 10 acknowledged the need for security despite feeling that it was a pain. Almost like, I'm part of this institution, there is some personal security responsibility, I'm okay with that. But it just gets annoying. It's like both sides. Anyways, I find it annoying, but I understand that it has to be done. And in terms of it being students that we were talking to, 9 of the participants believe the university took security very seriously. There's that you've got to reset your passwords, there's all these rules. And they took this into their other habits. I think it was, again, hinted at in earlier talks, was this was their most complex password. And so it felt kind of easier to copy that to accounts that weren't as secure. And also it felt like, well, this is the definition of security, surely, all this stringency, and I can take that somewhere else and know that that's a secure password. So it kind of influences them, perhaps not just there at the university, but when they go on into careers afterwards. So with all of that, the goal was to look at these user experiences and consider what could be done to the existing processes. So what we had suggested was that users are provided with some real-time feedback during password creation. Again, earlier today, I think it was suggested that the policy is transparent and you let people know what the rules are. And this may reduce the number of attempts at creating a password, the frustration levels and the time to create a password. So even though it looks successful in the logs, that, as I said right at the start, it's not simply a case of here's a ticket, someone's reset their password, that's it, we'll leave them alone. It's how is this happening over time? What's the effect on the population over time? So we'd like to try and make it easier for people. And also, number two, revisit the communication and justification of password policies. So related to the risk understanding as well, explicitly relate the potential threats to the activities that people have. So there was one or two that were saying, well, yeah, if you get hold of my password, then you can see my lecture timetable. You can go to my lectures if you want, that's fine. But then giving these results back to the help desk managers, there was like, well, do these people want emails being sent from their accounts? So well, relate that to what people are doing. And ultimately, don't assume that policies are usable if the majority of users aren't seeking help desk support. There's always this kind of silent development of coping strategies going on. And yes, we accept that it was 20 students that we interviewed. That it was an exploration of the issues, but we certainly want to do more interviews with users, students, but also staff, and surveys as well. The interviews should capture the range of issues, and then structured surveys would follow to reach a wider user base. That's especially interesting for us in terms of the contrast between the student interviewee experience of this recovery system and what we were seeing in those log results that we looked at. And log data offered limited insight into that user experience and the habits and points of frustration, but it was a lot of data going over lots of years. So what would be great would be to identify some stable metrics that could then be followed into the future for this effort that people are going through and for the impact upon people. Where the effort and the impact potentially have hidden costs for security managers. If looking globally at on a wider scale for the participating uni, there is, if the potential losses to a security incident are lower than the potential losses of who knows how many people not being able to do their work, that's something to consider. And I've finished way ahead of time now. Okay.